Recording. So, all right. Today we're going to talk about how nonprofits often look good on the outside, but they have a hard time on the inside. And that's going to be the topic today because this is really important because I'm sure you've met some business owners or some leaders of organizations and you think they're doing amazing, right? But then you sit down with them and start having a conversation only to find out that things are not working the way it's supposed to. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And if you're here, hashtag live, let me know you're here. Let's let the algorithm do its thing and comment and let me know where you're catching this from. Um, because I'm going to be here for as long as I can. Because then I had a call that canceled, so I'm here. Anyways, like I was saying, an organization can look very polished on and put together and even successful on paper, right? On the outside, you see them on the news, they look like they're doing good and all of that. But quietly, behind the scenes, things are falling apart. And that's the part that they're not telling you. It's when it's falling apart. Because oftentimes nobody's going to tell you, like, oh, yeah, my organization, we're not able to bring in or generate revenue. We can't pay our people. Nobody is going to tell you that. But trust, a lot of them, it's happening and they're not saying it and they're not talking about it, but it's more real than you know. So you have to take that into consideration when you are making sure that your organization is doing well. Hey, Lee, how are you doing? So, really think about that. Just because they look good on the outside does not mean they are doing well. And there is a lot to say as to what you should be doing to ensure your organization is set up for success, where it's not only looking good on the outside, but internally behind the scenes, it's also doing well. So we're going to break down why appearances don't equal sustainability for sure, right? And how nonprofits and companies also, because not only nonprofits, but for profits as well, they can miss oftentimes critical operational cracks until it's too late. And for me, it always goes back to operations, okay? And that's the thing you do not want to miss. So for those who are new here, my name is Stacey. I'm a fractional COO and operations strategist. I'm the person that leaders call when the back end of their organization isn't working, when systems are failing or deadlines are slipping and the team is overwhelmed, but no one wants to say it out loud. So, with that said, let's talk a little bit more about what that's going to look like and what you should learn today and what you should walk away with. We want to talk about why looking good on the outside can often hide serious internal issues, right? How the role of operations and long-term sustainability or long-term stability and growth, that's really important because it does play a role in long-term anything. Because then if you don't have the operations, then it's really going to be a problem. And let me see what Lee said here, because then I have too many. Yeah, Lee, you know what it is, because we have to be honest about these conversations, okay, and talk about like why this stuff matters. So, other things you'll learn today is how to identify some of these cracks before they become a bigger issue at hand, right? Because you need to make sure that you identify these gaps, so you can correct them on the back end so they're not becoming a bigger problem later on. Okay, and steps that you can take to also strengthen the foundation of the organization. Because if you think about it, a house that you're building, the house cannot be built on sand. It has to be built on a solid foundation. So that's the same with your organization or company. You need to make sure that the foundation is solid to ensure that it can continue growing. Because then, let's say you decided to add a second floor to your home. First of all, the foundation needs to be able to support that, and also the beams, the support system needs to be able to support that second floor. So you have to think about it in that sense. If you're not a technical person or somebody that looks at these things in terms of building, it's the same concept for your company or organization. The foundation needs to be stable, then the support systems needs to also be stable. Okay, so if your company is just looking the part, but really not having it together behind the scene, I want you to also watch the replay because it'll show you how, why it's important to turn things around. And while you're here, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe for more insights on nonprofit leadership, operations, and sustainable growth because that's what I'm here to do. All right, so let's just keep going and move forward. So as I said, these are the things that are very important that we need to talk about, but also hashtag live, hashtag replay, whoever's looking. And usually, like if you're familiar with my videos, I if I have something to say, I will say it. The only thing I ask is that you engage, ask your questions, drop your thoughts, and share this video where this hits home, okay? Because that's how you'll get the most of our time together, okay? And, let's just make it do what it do. I already introduced myself, Stacey, and for those who are new here, welcome, welcome. I'm glad to have you. And Lee, thank you for joining live. I'm excited to have you live today. If you have any questions, definitely drop them in the comments. I would love to be able to engage with you. So we talked about how, you can look good on the outside, but like things are not looking good on the inside. But one of the things that happens with this whole concept when things look good on the outside, but not on the inside, is sometimes you go on the inside and you're talking to the leaders and you find out that the leader doesn't know where the money's going. They don't know what's happening inside the organization. They have no idea what's happening inside the organization. So that's one of the issues that I find when we talk about a lack of infrastructure or just a lack of foundation is the leaders not knowing exactly what's happening within the companies. And that in itself, to me, it boggles my mind. It makes no sense to me why, like, a leader does not know what's going on. It's like somebody asking me, "Hey, where's the key to your house?" I don't know, but it's your house. I still don't know. Like these are things that I'm talking about as the leader. If you have the infrastructure secure, you need to have a level of hierarchy where different leaders in the organization know what's happening within the organization itself, or they know where to get that information, right? So if I come to you and ask you, okay, what's the budget? How's this money being spent? And you tell me I have no idea, then that's a problem that needs to be analyzed within itself. Because one thing I'm going to say, like, whether you like it or not, and unfortunately, it's more common than you think. Okay. It's something that happens when growth usually outpaces systems, okay? When the strategy is not connected to the operations, where leaders confuse having more funding with more capacity. Just because you have more money does not mean you have more capacity because you may have more money going, but you're spending so much on admin cost and operational costs. You're not really thinking about how to expand the capacity to make sure that the delivery of the programs is more efficient. So there's really not an increase in capacity. And that's the thing that's happening is that leaders are confusing more money with more capacity, but that's not always the case. I've seen companies and organizations that are multi-million dollar organizations and companies that are running with 5 people on staff and they're doing phenomenal. Okay, so it really boils down to your operations and systems behind the scenes and how you're delivering the services and programs that you have. For those who are not familiar, because then you may have been watching my page for a long time, but oftentimes you're like, I don't know if this can help me. So, in plain language, I'm gonna define what they are, what operations are for those people that are new and do not understand what I'm talking about, so you can have a better idea of how this is important to you and whoever in your family is an entrepreneur, organization, nonprofit, for profit alike. Okay. And don't forget, if you are live, hashtag live. If you're catching the replay, hashtag replay. So what operations are, it's basically how your organization or company runs behind the scenes. Okay. It'll be the people, the processes, the tools, and decision-making structures that turn strategy into day-to-day reality for your company or organization. So when your operations are weak, what happens is that money gets spent, but nobody can tell you on what. That's an example of weak operations when we talk about this specific topic, right? So when operations are weak, money gets spent, nobody can tell you on what, for what purpose, and whether it actually drove results. That's an example of weak operations, right? So why we need operations is because strong operations will keep your finances, programs, and reporting aligned, right? They make sure that every dollar connects back to your mission because without operations, what happened is that you're in constant catch-up mode where or you're always trying to figure out what to do next, and that's where the funding gaps form. Because if you don't know how to spend the money effectively, if your operations is just I'm a I'm a throw spaghetti and figure it out, or I'm a just like run it and figure it out. That's where the gaps occur. Okay. So I want you to really like sit down and think about what in your operations is not making sense because if you have not determined where you're trying to go, you have no strategic plan, no operational plan, right? And you're just going. You're going, 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 and then in no way does your operation make sense. Like you have no processes, you have no workflow, you have no systems in place to ensure that they are in alignment with what you're trying to accomplish, then you're doing the work for naught. You're doing the work and you're running around in circles and not really accomplishing anything. Have you ever heard the saying that this person is talking to say nothing? Right? That's what happens when you don't have operations. You're talking to say nothing because then you're just churning things out, but instead of the organization actually growing, it's just there, it's just existing. Okay. So you feel like the organization might just fall apart at one point because you don't know how you're going to sustain it. And that's what I want you to keep in mind when it comes to um, operations. Okay. So that's the one thing I have to say about operation. Now, Um, systems is basically the tools that you use to support your operation. So when I talk about operations and system, operation is the overall how things happen. And systems are tools that help operations. So an example of a system would be a standard operating procedure or a process, a checklist or whatever to support the work that you do. So let's say I have a system for donor engagement or donations and stuff like that. So let's say that the workflow, how it goes, is that somebody makes a donation on our donor box, right? And that triggers a workflow and automation where donor exists, they get a receipt, right? Once they get a receipt, I have my Zapier put them on my email list, and now they're on a newsletter and they're receiving nurturing emails in from the organization to keep them informed of what's going on. And also, there's a automation to remind this particular staff member to check in with this donor, right? So there's a system in place for this whole process. Okay. So um, I'm gonna give you a few scenarios, another scenario for you to think about. Think about a nonprofit that receives three grants, right? Each program manager is tracking their expenses in separate spreadsheets. Okay, three grants, three separate spreadsheets, and the finance team does not see these spreadsheets until the quarter closes. So what's happening is that reports to funders are usually late and inaccurate because it's three different spreadsheets that are by three different people and there's no it's not seamless, right? there's a lack of coordination between that, and the executive director, whoever the leader of that team is, ends up being blindsided when the board asks why $10,000 was unaccounted for. That's a scenario I want you to think about, of like an operation that's lacking, right? And in this case, it's not like some people will say it's fraud. No, it's a systems failure where their systems did not match what they were doing. They received 3 grants, but the way the systems they used to track this money was not efficient, and it did not do what it was supposed to do. It was not giving. Like these kids these days are going to say, it wasn't giving, okay? So that's a scenario. So let's say you have a company, it's a business led by the founder. Another scenario I'm going to give you, hopefully, to help you paint the picture of why operations is so important. Let's say the business is scaling quickly, right? Sales are up, but there's no clear workflow for how projects are either billed, invoiced, or tracked, right? So cash flow looks good one month and terrible the next month. I know some people call it fast and famine, right? Yeah, fast and famine, right? Feast and famine, whatever. But it's not the team is bad with money, is that there are processes missing. Because in companies like that, what happens is like they're not following a specific process that is providing repeatable results, right? So with the processes missing, it leads to inconsistency. So there's a lack of sustainability. It's the same thing with organizations where there's bad systems or bad processes. It impedes the operational success of the organization. So, and I know I've mentioned workflow a couple of times. With these scenarios, a workflow is basically a step-by-step map for how work gets done. Because then remember I told you like when the donor made the donation and then it trickled down, this is what happens next, this is what happens next. That's what I mean by a step-by-step map of how work gets done. Oftentimes, depending on the processes, you need to have a workflow documented of what's supposed to happen on this person's journey, right? So let's say you have a program for youth that go in this mentorship program. Maybe there's an intake form. XYZ person interviews this person makes this referral. So you need a workflow to figure out how things are happening. And then if things can be automated, then you do that. So those are examples of systems to ensure that the operation goes well. Okay, so these are examples. So workflow is very important because when you have workflows documented, um, it ensures that every expense approval, reimbursement, invoice, like it's treated well, and there are no gaps with these things. Okay. Um, because a weak infrastructure can cost you, and it can mean money. I've said it before, it can mean time, and it can mean your credibility. Because sometimes when, from the outside looking in, if somebody sees your company or organization not having a process or system to do things, then you look like you don't know what you're doing. So your credibility is at stake here. Okay, time, you're wasting time on projects or decisions that should not take that long. Or money, maybe you're losing extra funding that you could have gotten if you had systems in place. Some people don't even have systems. If somebody wants to make a donation, they have to contact you. You're putting barriers in front of people for them to do what they want to do. They want to donate. Do you have a landing page showing them how to donate? Do you have a button, a working button that they can click and make the donation? If they want to send a check, is the instruction on the page, mail your check to X, blah, 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 blah. And do you have email set up to send them a receipt? Like all of these things, you need to prepare for certain things, or you end up like the lack of infrastructure, weak infrastructure ends up costing you more than you think. And that's why organizations, leaders and organizations or company will tell me, like, I have no idea where our money is going. It's your job to know. Okay. It's not that the money is missing, it's that there's no system tying the money to the mission in real time, and it's costing you to just not look like you don't know what you're doing. Okay? So these are definitely things I want you to think about. And if anybody wants more examples of what a system is supposed to look like, definitely let me know because again, a system is a tool, a repeatable method in an operation, right? Same result every time. Clear steps, clear owner, clear deadline. That's a system. A grant management system, that's an example. Donor management system, that's an example. Budget tracking system. These are examples of systems, right? And I know one system guide I have is the system setup guide on my stand store. It's $47 and it's basically a setup guide to use either Monday.com, Asana, or Airtable if you want to get that guide to help you set up your dashboards for different things like grant management, budget tracking, and there was another one on there, Document Hub. Definitely check the link. I'm gonna put it in the comments because then I forgot to get that link before the call started or this live started, but you should definitely get a copy of this guide and start working on your dashboard. Setup guide. Okay, system setup guide is going to be in the comments because that one again, like it's $47 available in my stand store. It shows you how to structure Airtable, Asana, Monday.com dashboards so you can track things like grants, budgets, and more. Okay, so that link is going to be in the comments if you're watching the replay on Facebook. If you want the link and you're watching this as a replay on anything else, comment the word setup and I'll send you the link for that. Okay. So, these are things I want you to start having. You need to start having certain systems in place to track finances, budget, finances, grants, and all of these things so it can improve your operations because once you do that, you'll be in a better place to have a level of success in your company or organization that you are lacking. And that's what I want you to start thinking about. Um, Now what else? What else do I have to say? Because then, y'all, again, this was really, I came on because somebody canceled a last minute call at 3:30. It's 4:09 on this side of the state. But this is really what I wanted to talk about. Let you should not let yourself as a leader not know where your money is going, where the money of the organization is going. Just like when you get paid, right? You know where your money is going. For your organization, you need to know where the money is going, and you need to be able to operate your organization or company in a way that's very efficient, where you're not wasting your time. You're not wasting anybody's time. And it's not about being incompetent, it's about infrastructure. And I always say you don't need to hustle more. You just need the systems that work for you, right? So your mission can breathe. So with that in mind, Lee, if you have any questions, drop in the comments. If anybody else is watching and you have questions, drop in the comments so I can answer live if needed. If you have any other questions, let me know because then I'll make sure to answer. And yeah, we'll go from there because my goal is to help you build the operations that support the vision of your organization. You can also book uh, precision strategy session. These are 90-minute strategy sessions. We just work on an action plan and you go. Give you the tools that you need. If you need templates while we're on the call, I give you the templates that you need and you just go. Okay, so if you can click the link in the comments to my stand store and yeah, go from there because then precision strategy session, I've had about 5 or 6 last month and they are they are building up for September, so book yours and definitely let's get yours on the books so you can get going because we're approaching quarter 4. Like there's no tomorrow because this year I feel this year has gone by so fast. But anyway, I'm gonna head out now, and if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. I'll be glad to answer. And thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Bye, y'all.